But the declarant, the complainer, says the agent who pointed the real gun in his face said, bang, bang, you're dead, liberal. What's the evidence of this? Where's their video, by the way? This judge who demands body-worn cameras on the federal officers, where's the video to support these allegations? None. Is this declarant even in court under oath, making these statements subject to cross-examination? No. They can say any damn thing they want, and it's not challenged in any way by this judge. She just accepts this as true. And nobody wants to do that, right? Right, Chief Bovino? Nobody wants to violate the TRO? Yeah, I'm not here to violate the TRO. You do agree with that, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay, we've got Saturday, the judge continues. Old Irving Park, another individual was speaking with agents. They didn't appear to be hurting or threatening anyone, and they were tackled to the ground and put in a headlock. Does anyone believe that Border Patrol is just walking up to people who aren't doing anything and putting them in a headlock? Where's the evidence of this? And Border Patrol agents are not allowed to use chokeholds or anything like that, correct? First of all, she's incorrect. You're allowed to use a chokehold if there's a deadly force threat. But a headlock is not a chokehold. And anything like that, what the hell does anything like that mean? Are you not allowed to touch a person's head? Again, this is why judges are not put in this role of micromanaging law enforcement. They don't know any of this. They don't have any competency here. Bovino has to explain to her. Those techniques and tactics can be employed. It's dependent on the situation. But the chokeholds, because chokeholds are evil, of course. The chokeholds, I've got a January 2021 Customs and Border Patrol use of force policy. Oh, not that one, the other one. The 2023 one, it talks about under general principles, use of safe tactics, and states that chokeholds and carotid restraints are prohibited unless deadly force is authorized. Chokeholds and carotid restraints. That's not a headlock, my friends. You'd agree with your own use of force policy, and of course, Bovino does agree. And generally, hypothetically, if we imagine this, some guy just standing on the street in front of his house or next to his car, most of the time, absent something unusual, is not presenting such a risk that deadly force is appropriate if he's just standing next to his car. Well, of course, who would disagree with this? Who would disagree with this? Well, yes, Your Honor, it would be situationally dependent. Of course, if there's no facts to justify a use of force, that use of force would be unlawful. But the question is, were there facts to support a use of force? Where's that inquiry? Where's that fact collection happening? Where are those claims being subject to an adversarial process? Nowhere in this judge's court. Bovino says it's situationally dependent. I would have to understand what that individual was doing, not your imagination that they were doing nothing, or what was happening before I could make a definitive assessment, because Bovino's not an idiot. The judge says, oh, okay, but what if hypothetically, what if hypothetically somebody had driven up in a car and they had been on a long run, so they're marathon training, and they got out of their car in their running clothes and they see a commotion and they're asking the agents what's going on? You would agree with me, under those circumstances, the person doesn't pose a level of threat that you can take them to the ground and use a chokehold on them. And Bovino says, yeah, given your idiotic imaginary scenario, that would be true. And the judge says, okay, well, I just want you to know, this isn't a gotcha moment. Really, it's not a gotcha moment. Wouldn't you agree that if there's no justification, there's no justification? That's not a gotcha moment? You Canadian-born to Jamaican parents, federal judge? It's just under those circumstances, those hypothetical, imaginary circumstances, that wouldn't justify that level of force, would it? Under the hypothetical you gave, that's right. And the judge says, and while the agents were leaving, without any warning, they deployed tear gas, and that those agents were masked and did not have any visible identification numbers. So that was Old Irving on Saturday. And that was the instance as well where children were present and they were dressed up in their Halloween costumes and they were walking over to St. Viator's Church, which is a grammar school in Chicago, a Catholic grammar school. And that Saturday, they were going to have a parade for Halloween. And those kids were tear gassed on their way to celebrate Halloween in their local school parking lot. Who compelled the use of that tear gas? It wasn't the officers acting in lawful self-defense. It was the violent protesters against whom the lawfully acting officers enforcing democratically enacted immigration laws were defending themselves. It's unbelievable. The judge, I can only imagine how terrified they were. Why are not you angry at the violent protesters who compelled this act of necessary self-defense? I can only imagine how terrified those kids were. St. Vitor's is a school that goes up to the 8th grade. I think they have a preschool. So kids from 3 years old to 8th grade, that neighborhood in Chicago, Old Irving Park. Because you're from North Carolina, right? You rebel, you Confederate. Yes, ma'am. You spent time in California, but you're not from Chicago, are you? You're not familiar with all the different neighborhoods in Chicago, as if that matters. Is Border Patrol only allowed to defend themselves in certain neighborhoods, but not in Old Irving Park, a fairly quiet neighborhood? Was it quiet when the Border Patrol was compelled to disperse gas? Was it quiet then, Your Honor? A quiet neighborhood, lots of families, a lot of single-family homes. And these kids, you can imagine, their sense of safety was shattered. Maybe it was shattered when Border Patrol was violently attacked and had to defend itself. Maybe the problem is the violent attack and not the lawful defense. Even the judge cannot say a word alleging that this act of defense by Border Patrol was unlawful. She just doesn't like that the people who initiated the attack on Border Patrol did it in the company of children in Halloween costumes. You can imagine their sense of safety was shattered on Saturday, and it's going to take a long time for that to come back, if ever. And not only was their sense of safety shattered, but it's connected to something that should have been a really happy day. They were getting to go to a Halloween party on a Saturday and see their friends and be all dressed up and get candy. And I don't know if you have kids, but kids love Halloween. You can't defend yourself if kids are celebrating Halloween. It's a day where, kind of all the rules go out the window. Do they? Does your TRO go out the window? You can eat as much candy as you want, and it's a fun day for them. And they were getting to celebrate Halloween early at school. And that's why one of the reasons I'm having you in today is to ensure that as you go about enforcing the law, that it's done in a manner that is objectively reasonable and consistent with your obligations and the agents under you, with the Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment, so that kids in Little Village can feel safe walking to the store or walking to school and not be worried about getting tear gas and not be terrified where they live. Well, how about you tell the violent protesters to stop compelling Border Patrol to defend themselves? That's not how any of us want to live. Yes, I bet you the Border Patrol agents also do not want to be subject to criminal, lethal attack. I know you wouldn't want to live that way. Live what way? In a way where we enforce the laws and law enforcement officers are allowed to lawfully defend themselves? I know I don't want to live like that. We want to know that where we are is safe and that the people who are here to protect us, law enforcement, are going to keep us safe. The audacity of this Canadian-born to Jamaican parents judge, everything that Greg Bovino has devoted his entire law enforcement career to has been in the pursuit of exactly this. And this judge is hamstringing him. So those are the judge continues. I think Lakeview as well, which is Friday, tear gas was deployed. In one instance, thrown out of the car as agents are driving away without warning, without explanation. Remember, when she says warning, she means there has to be an explanation. Get back is not enough. We've got no identification. One of the declarants, the complainers, was tear gassed, continued to record, but now was afraid to exercise their First Amendment rights. He's afraid to go outside and see what's happening on the street where he lives. So this should stop law enforcement from being able to lawfully defend themselves. Remember, the judge is not saying that any of this use of force by Border Patrol was unlawful. None of it. She just doesn't like the emotional impact on the children and the neighbors. Under the First Amendment, we cannot have people be afraid. Anybody see those words in the First Amendment to the Constitution? That the First Amendment means that it's against the Constitution for you to be in fear when the police are lawfully defending themselves from lethal attack. That's the provision of the First Amendment. These people don't have to like what you're doing, Judge Bovino, and it's okay. That's what democracy is. And they can say they don't like what you're doing. They don't like how you're enforcing the law. They wish you would leave Chicago and take the agents with you. Not much projection happening here, Judge Ellis. And they can say that, and that's fine, but they can't get tear gassed for it. Where is the allegation that Customs and Border Patrol is tear gassing people purely because they were exercising their First Amendment rights peacefully, just making shit up? I think we're on the same page, right, Bovino? I understand what you're saying, Your Honor. We're not tear gassing anybody. I understand what you're saying, Your Honor. The judge says, okay, I know you understand what I'm saying, but my question was, I think we're on the same page, right? Your Honor, as far as, we're on the same page, we'll abide by the TRO. Okay, that's what I meant. And sort of, in order to make sure we're on the same page, every time use of force is used, there has to be a report. Agents need to create a report. So those reports need to be done within 24 hours. Is that right? And Bovino says, well, it has to be reported to a supervisor within 1 hour, a rough draft within 24 hours, and finalized within 72 hours. Judge says, so at this point, anything from Saturday would be finalized. Is that fair? Yes. So by the close of business today, so this is about noontime in Chicago right now. So within the next 5 hours, I would like all of the use of force reports, all of them, and they can be provided to me under seal from September 2nd through Saturday. This is weeks of use of force reports she wants produced in her courtroom within a few hours. Any agent that has body-worn camera video that links up with any of those reports, I want all that body-worn camera video by the close of business today. This would be terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of video that we know damn well she's not going to review. At these confrontations, there's a dozen or more Customs and Border Patrol officers. They've all got cameras. They're all recording. This could be hundreds, even thousands of hours of video. She's not going to review any of this, but she's demanding that Bovino somehow produce all this video to her within the next 4 to 5 hours. And Bovino reasonably says, can we have a longer period of time than the close of business? The sheer amount of those reports. And the body cam footage really takes a long time to download. And if we have to match it up to the reports, that takes a lot of hours. Again, these are all law enforcement resources that are being diverted away from law enforcement for no actual purpose under the micromanagement of an unelected, black-robed, tyrannical, inferior federal district trial court judge, not even born in America, born in Canada, to parents who were not even Canadian. They were Jamaican. So culturally, third world. So now she wants it by the end of the week on Friday. And any reports going forward, she wants those finalized within 24 hours. Hopefully, she's saying the reports that are finalized first in the 72-hour window, she wants them 24 hours after that. Yeah, once they've been finalized, she wants them 24 hours later. Unbelievable burden here. And then I'd like to see you at 4:30 every day, 4:30 every day until our preliminary injunction hearing to hear how the day went. And you can tell me, we've got no incidents, nothing happened, everything was smooth, and that will be great. As if this is within the control of Border Patrol. As if it's Gregory Bovino who's causing the incidents, who's making stuff happen, who's preventing law enforcement from operating smoothly, and it's not the cause of the violent protesters. She wants them there in person not even virtually, in person. Another unbelievable constraint on a senior officer within federal law enforcement. So whatever he does all day, he knows at 4:30 he better be in her courtroom. Yeah, any of you ever had to go to court? That literally will take hours out of his day because he's got to get there first, right? He's not enforcing the law in the federal courthouse. He reasonably enough says, well, Your Honor, we're not federal judges. We don't have a 9 to 4:30 workday. Our workday goes past 4:30, and I'm still in the field. Can it be when I get out of the field? Because sometimes all these events are still taking place. Do I have to abandon my men in the middle of a violent confrontation to come here and report to you for no purpose? Well, the judge says, well, I'm not unreasonable. You can report as whatever happened up to 4:30. I mean, you want to come in later, but that's an inconvenience for me and my courthouse. Building security. I mean, we closed the building at 6. Can you be here at 6? He says, yes. What's he going to say? So I'll see you tomorrow at 6. And then I'd like a chart, the judge says. And this can be by Friday, of everyone who has been arrested that has not been arrested for anything immigration related. I'm not interested in you drive to Home Depot, talk to a group of people, and arrest 3. I'm not interested in those people. I'm interested in, there's now a crowd of people that are watching, the public. And you have like this woman in Little Village got arrested, or the guy at Old Irving got arrested. Those arrests. I'd like those individuals' names. The individuals' names, the date of the arrest, and what they were charged with, and the resolution. So if they were released without charging, in other words, if you did them a favor, whatever it was, or they were given a citation, whatever it was, I'd like a chart of that. Another administrative burden, micromanagement, put on federal law enforcement by this feckless judge. And then moving forward, just update that chart every week. Easy peasy. But I'd like it from September 2nd through today, weeks, the entire month. Friday is the end of the month, right? Friday is the 31st. She'd like that entire chart of all those incidental arrests reported to her in chart form by Friday. And then Bovino says, well, what about weekends, Your Honor? Again, we're not federal judges. We don't get Wednesdays off for golf. We work on weekends. Do you want me to report to you on weekends? Oh, no. No, the judge wants her weekends free. She doesn't want to be inconvenienced. We won't meet here on weekends. I don't want to be inconvenienced. You can just fill me in on Monday. And that's the end of Bovino.